Castlevania Order of Ecclesia was my favorite Nintendo DS entry in the franchise. The game tells the story of Shinoa, a woman chosen to be the bearer of a glyph-based weapon called Dominus. This would enable the bearer to defeat Dracula in lieu of the Belmont clan's absence in a post-Symphony of the Night world. Keep in mind, of course, this is if we ignore non-canon entries, which hurts my feelings, so you shouldn't do that. Anyways, Shinoa's entry was mostly praised by fans of the franchise for further advancing the Ecclesia style of gameplay, which mostly dominated the Castlevania series in a pre-Lords of Shadow world. Why we never got a direct sequel for it is beyond me, but a group of fans answered this very question about 8 to 9 years ago, when they began development of a fan game called Castlevania Shadow of Ecclesia. Although an alpha build demo was released a long time ago, it's since gone back into the depths of development, with a prologue recently surfacing. If you're interested in seeing a fancy trailer for it, check out the link below, as the developers posted it just a few days ago, and it looks great. Initially, the alpha build's problem was a really rough frame rate, but the bones of an enhanced combat system were there. When this latest build was released, I took it upon myself to check it out, and I gotta say, I was very impressed. However, I do have some gripes with it, so here's my impressions of Shadow of Ecclesia. The story so far in this prologue involves Shinoa coming upon a castle that appears out of nowhere, calling to her. She enters and begins to face off against remnants of Dracula's forces. It's told to the player in the intro that Dracula's essence is embedded in the shards of the Dominus, and with Shinoa having such a strong bond with the Dominus, it lures her into the accurately dubbed Nightmare Castle. There are still some choppy issues with the dialogue scroll in this intro, so hopefully that gets ironed out in a future update, but that is more or less the intro to this prologue. Though the game starts off with some lovely art and an explanation of the story this time around, the fan game nature of this is initially quite apparent. Now granted, this is not a for-profit game, it's a game made out of love of the franchise, and that shows despite the lack of animated cutscene opening, which Order of Ecclesia did in fact have. But in this sequel, there is a greater push for flashier combat, more in line with something from a modern perspective. For example, Dead Cells, utilizing the rolling mechanics along with some glyphs which work off of a timed bar. Shadow of Ecclesia shows off some really impressive, fluid animation with exciting combat that feels like a proper evolution for the franchise while still staying close to the Castlevania vibe. I can't speak highly enough of the combat here, it's buttery smooth. I love how fast the combat is, with glyph moves being done with button placements such as up and attack or down forward and attack. As more glyphs are unlocked, more moves show up, increasing the options for combat immensely, and going back and forth on the attack buttons really speeds up the attacks. Weapons are linked with the bar below the health bar, but I never ran out of attack power, and the length of the bar can be upgraded just as the health bar can, so I don't think it'll be a problem. Musically, it's a mix of new tracks, remixes, and Order of Ecclesia returning songs, and it's all so good. The songs all fit with the musical motifs laid out in previous games, and it's as exciting to listen to as it is to see the game in action. There are some really breathtaking backgrounds and platforms in this game which really impressed me, along with a bit of copy-paste from previous entries. But I really like the idea of this castle being a combination of new areas and old ones. It kind of fits in with the idea behind the castle being remnants of Dracula's past. The controller I used was an 8-bit DO adapter utilizing a Wii U classic controller, which overall handled things well, but the buttons were all out of whack, so I had to reconfigure them to the best of my ability. After a minute or two of reconfiguration, the gameplay is pretty responsive. Later in the demo, Maria Renard shows up in what appears to be her form from Dracula X Chronicles. I have many questions as to how she is here in such a young form, but based on what the script says, it appears as if Maria's form is merely a conduit for either someone else or perhaps a visit from the past? I didn't really understand it, but it captured my interest for sure, and I want to see more of this game so I can kind of piece together the puzzle of what's going on. I think this is a great start to a potential sequel and a spotlight on how Konami themselves could advance combat to be more in line with games in a modern era. There's plenty of room for a modern 2D Castlevania title, but the thing that Konami needs to focus on is making it play, feel, look, and sound like Castlevania, and the developers of this fan game are doing exactly that, so I hope Konami is taking notes. In the link down below, you'll find the fan game available for download. I will give a heads up that, similar to many fan-developed games, it can flag your virus malware warnings, so keep that in mind. But I personally tested it, as you can see, and it gets a thumbs up from this Castlevania nerd. Shout out to Dragon X24 and their team for providing us fans hope for another fantastic fan game, and I look forward to following the continued development. Do you think there's room for an Order of Ecclesia sequel by Konami? Have you played this demo? What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, please consider subscribing for more Castlevania content, and I'll see you on another video in the future.